the Secretary General of the Palestinian National Initiative, and he joins us now from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. Really good to have you back with us, Mustafa. Let's look at the state of the Palestinian economy before the war, because we know Gaza especially was being strangled by years of a crippling Israeli blockade, and all of its borders were essentially controlled by Israel as well as Egypt. Explain to us what Gaza's economy was like before this war.
Gaza's economy was in strangulation, purposeful strangulation by the Israeli siege on Gaza. And the situation was that 80% of young graduates had no jobs whatsoever. It is now 80% unemployment in general, but then among the younger generation, it was very high. And people lacked electricity. People could have electricity only 5 hours a day. People had very difficulty getting clean water. 95% of the water in Gaza before the war was either polluted or so salted that it is not good for human use. The environmental situation was very disastrous. Israel was restricting even fishing in the sea by restricting how deep people can sail into the sea. And much of the industry was destroyed because Israel purposefully bombarded most of the factories during the several wars that it conducted on Gaza. But most important, people had no jobs. And there was no investment, of course, and no free access. People could not leave Gaza easily, and people could not go to Gaza. We in the West Bank could not go and visit Gaza at any time. I remember when we wanted to go to Gaza, we had to travel to Jordan and then fly to Egypt and then cross Sinai to get to Gaza through Rafah. A trip that would cost more than traveling to the United States, but very difficult too. Instead of 2 hours, you had to travel for 2 days. So the situation in Gaza was terrible. The economy was totally strangulated. And now everything is much worse because of this terrible destruction that Israel has caused during this war.
And Mustafa, talk to us about the situation in the occupied West Bank, because we know that it had fared better than Gaza for many reasons. But now, of course, we're seeing ongoing Israeli raids across many parts of the occupied West Bank. How has that economy where you are been affected by Israel's latest war?
The economy here is collapsing, basically, because of many factors. First of all, you have 670 military Israeli checkpoints, each of which can be a detention center, which are blocking the freedom of movement in the West Bank. A trip that used to take 20 minutes could take now 3 hours or 4 hours, or sometimes it's impossible. Many of the entrances to major cities are blocked completely by the Israeli army. Moving goods from one place to another is a very difficult thing. Israel is controlling more than 85% of our water and depriving most cities and villages from clean water. So a place like Ramallah, which is the center of the Palestinian Authority, would not get water more than once, 1 or 2 days a week. Add to that the fact that Israel is withholding our tax revenue. 70% of the Palestinian Authority budget comes from taxes that Palestinians pay, but most of these taxes go through Israel. Israel charges 3% to collect them, but now it is withholding them. Practically, the Israeli government, and in particular the Minister of Finance, Smotrich, are practicing piracy against our tax income. And depriving the Palestinian Authority from its revenue. And that's why the Palestinian Authority cannot pay more than 150,000 employees, more than half of their salary. And on top of that, Israel is preventing workers from going to work in Israel, which means 220,000 workers are now unemployed since the 7th of October. So, and of course, this affects the whole economy. If people don't work, they don't make income, they don't buy things. And that affects the merchants, affects the industry, affects the food industry, affects the clothing, everything. So practically, we are in a very deep economic crisis. And add to that the settlers' attacks on Palestinian communities. Today, the Israelis illegal settlers were trying to burn houses in the town of Betin and in the village of Burqa. And the agriculture itself is affected drastically, especially in the Jordan Valley, by these Israeli attacks, by the settlers' attacks, which is supported by the Israeli army. So all in all, you are talking about an economy in deep, deep crisis. And now the rate of unemployment has jumped up dramatically, which also affects the economy in a very negative way. There can be no improvement whatsoever unless this war and this terrible Israeli aggression on Gaza stops, and unless the blockades that are in the West Bank are removed, and unless there is freedom of movement, and unless we have access to our natural resources and our import and our export, which we don't have since 1967.
Yes, and some analysts suggest that those issues that you just pointed out will all be solved once Palestinian statehood is made a reality. And we know that the ongoing Israeli attack has fueled calls for the two-state solution. Do you believe that is the ultimate solution to this, that Palestinians must be allowed to control their own affairs through having an independent state?
Of course, without removing the occupation, without removing this system of apartheid, I mean, the whole systems of laws that are governing the West Bank are discriminatory laws. You have one law for Israelis and another law for Palestinians, which is discriminating against us. So without the removal of the settlements, without the removal of the Israeli occupation, we cannot have independent state. And if we have independent state and we are in control of our borders, our natural resources, our water, our land, we will develop a very good economy. Palestinians are one of the most educated people in the Middle East, maybe the most educated people in the Middle East. We have built many other economies in this region, especially in the Gulf. We have people with great entrepreneurial spirit, with great experience. The only problem that we have is lack of freedom. If we have freedom, we will build a very prosperous economy, whether in the West Bank or in Gaza Strip or anywhere else. But Israel is blocking all of that. And without a political solution, without removal of occupation and apartheid, there can be no chance for our economic development.
Okay, Mustafa Barghouti, we'll have to leave it there, but it's great as always to get your analysis. Thank you.
Thank you.